Welcome to the Evolution Show. I'm Johan Landgren. If you're new to the show, I'm a full-time investor and writer in sustainable tech. And on the Evolution Show, we bring inspiration to talk about smart energy solutions, electric transports, AI, and inspiration for sustainable living. And today, I have a really inspiring guest for you on the show to guide anybody interested in owning an electric vehicle, or if you're just curious about EVs. I'm joined by Tibor Blomhäll, president and founder of Tesla Club Sweden, and writer of the new, very practical Swedish book called Owning an EV, or Skaffa Elbil in Swedish. Tibor is one of Sweden's leading experts on EVs, and he has a wealth of knowledge and stories to tell. I'm also an early EV adopter, and I've been driving a Tesla Model S since 2014. So I think we can bring some valuable perspectives on what to think about when it comes to EVs. In the next two episodes, me and Tibor Blomhäll will talk about Tesla's Gigafactory in Berlin and the future of Tesla. So stick around. I hope you like the content, and if you want to support the show, we really appreciate a thumbs up. And consider subscribing. As always, stay ahead of the curve and stay electric. This is the Evolution Show. Welcome to the Evolution Show, Tibor Blomhäll.
Thank you.
You are the welcome. You've been on the show several times before, actually, so this is not the first time. And I encourage people to check out the previous episodes for Tibor Blomhäll. He's the president and founder of Tesla Club Sweden, and he's one of Sweden's leading experts on electric vehicles. And in previous episodes, we have talked about myths about electric cars. We've debunked most of the myths, I would say. So I encourage people to check that out if you want to know more about debunking EV myths. And today, Tibor, we're going to talk about your new book and the basics, basically, the book is how to owning an EV, you could say, perhaps, or Skaffa Elbil in Swedish. And it's a really a good introduction for people interested in EVs, I would say, in general. Either if you want to buy an EV, if you want to buy an EV in the second market, aftermarket, and a lot of beginner's advice, but also things, I think, for people who are already into EVs. So it's a lot of things you can learn from this. So today we're going to cover some of these really good advice, I would say. So this episode is sort of a guide, introduction for people interested in EVs. But let's start with you, Tibor, for people who don't know you. You own two EVs today, I think. And so could you start to tell us a little bit, your background a little bit and how long you've been driving EVs?
Okay, so we are an EV-only household. My first EV on Nissan Leaf I got in 2013, and in 2019 we got a Tesla Model 3 long range. So nowadays I drive the Tesla and my drives the Leaf. And actually our kids right now are learning how to drive, and they are using the Leaf to learn. So all of us in the family drive electric. The Nissan Leaf is now 8 years old, but it's still going strong. It has about 100 kilometer real world range. That's perfectly adequate for my wife. The batteries have degraded some. They have around 80% of their original capacity. So that's why the range has degraded too. But for city driving is more than enough. But I mean, for longer drives on vacations, we use the Tesla. We have been all around Europe before the pandemic. And nowadays we use to travel within Sweden.
Yeah. And you're a writer on Tesla Club Sweden. I think one of Sweden's most popular EV sources site to check out things about EVs. And I encourage people to check that out if you're in Sweden. If if you want to get interested in EV, if you're interested in EVs, that's a really good start to check out. I read it every weekday morning when you publish them. But so how is it? Why do you publish so many articles on EVs? What's your drive behind you? What's your energy and motivation?
Well, I used to say that I do it instead of having a life. I started in 2013 to cover electric cars, simply because there was no credible Swedish source for correct information back then. I wanted to educate about electric cars, new energy sources, and technical advancements in general.
Yeah. The idea for this starting today, is it's a 3-episode miniseries. So I would like to start off by talking about the lessons from your book. But in the next episode, we'll talk more about Tesla. So if you're interested in Tesla specifically, I encourage people to stick around, because then we're going to talk about Tesla's Gigafactory being built here outside Berlin in Germany. And followed by a 3rd episode where we focus solely on Tesla. So Tesla's future and with Cybertrucks and so on. So for people interested in Tesla, have some patience. We're coming back to Tesla very soon. But okay, so today, if we start off, if you're interested in EVs, you're considering either buying one, buying a new one, or, on the aftermarket, what is your best advice for anybody considering to buy an EV today? You mentioned several rules of thumb in your book.
Yeah, I mean, my best advice is to just do it, buy one. But make sure you have somewhere to charge it overnight. And check if it has large enough batteries for your daily driving needs. Many people are still afraid, do I really dare to buy an electric car? But I think, especially this year in 2021 in Sweden, I would like to rephrase the question the other way around. Do you dare to buy an internal combustion engine car? 10 years from now, how much will the petrol cost? Where are you going to drive your car? Will such cars be allowed in the town at all? And when you try to sell your car, will there be any buyers at all? We have seen a tremendous shift this year towards electric cars and plug-in hybrids in Sweden. And it's not just nerds who are buying electric cars anymore.
No. And I read this morning actually on Tesla Club Sweden, you wrote about a really exciting news, I think, in general, not just for Tesla, that the Tesla Model 3 is actually now the most popular, the most sold car in the month of June here in Sweden, of all cars. So not just EVs, but in general, even topping Volvo. Volvo we're in the homeland of Volvo, so to speak. So it's kind of interesting, really, milestone, I think, in general for EVs. Something, if you want to talk about that a little bit, maybe.
Milestone really was already in December 2020, when the Volkswagen ID.3 got to be the best sold car in Sweden. Not the electric car, the best sold car in that month. And in April, it was the Volkswagen ID.4, and now it's Tesla. Next month, perhaps it will be the MG, the new Chinese car manufacturer. So we see that electric cars are not a small player anymore, but they actually make it to the top of the sales lists, and people are buying them like hotcakes.
Yeah, really interesting. And so if people are looking into buying an EV today, maybe they hesitate when they see the sometimes very hefty prices if you compare to a similar sized gasoline or diesel vehicle. So we both know, both you and I, we own EVs. I've had a Tesla Model S since 2014, and you have a Tesla Model 3, and before that you had a Nissan Leaf, so you have had an EV for a long time. So for people considering buying an EV, there are many advantages. Could you perhaps elaborate why they shouldn't just look at the price, the buying price and upfront price when they compare, a non-EV with an EV?
Yeah, to start with, why do people just look at the sticker price? Well, because most of their costs used to be roughly the same. For all internal combustion engine cars, buying the petrol, the insurance, the service costs, they were about the same. Of course, there were small differences, but all cars needed to have petrol, all cars needed to be sent to service every year. So it was easy to compare prices. You just look at the sticker price. But what if you have this car that costs more on the sticker, but doesn't need expensive petrol to run? And if the car doesn't need service, then you have to recalculate your budgets, include everything, the total cost of ownership. And then you suddenly realize that that electric car with a higher sticker price is actually cheaper to own. The people assume electric cars are just as expensive to own, drive, and maintain as petrol cars, but they are not. It's almost ridiculous how cheap an electric car is to own. And then it's okay to have a bit more expensive to buy. And actually, prices are going down. And in a few years, the sticker price will be the same for an electric car as for a petrol car. And they will still be much cheaper to operate. So who in their right mind will buy a petrol car? Right now you have to make some calculations, but in a couple of years this will be obvious to people.
So if you're considering buying an EV, but you still can't buy a new one, because a lot of people can't, obviously, people are starting to look at the aftermarket, and there are, more and more you can find EVs, but they are gone very fast too. So what's your advice if people are looking into buying a used EV on the aftermarket?
Yeah, I mean, many people buy used cars. You don't go and buy a new car. And it has been the same progress in the used car market. Lots of EVs have come and people are buying them, but people are kind of afraid of buying a used EV. Will the batteries last? Will it be expensive to maintain? And I would say, don't be afraid of buying a used EV. Just make sure they have enough range for your needs, because all the electric cars had short range to begin with, and then the batteries have degraded, so they have kind of short electric ranges. Make sure the range is enough for your daily use. And actually, buying an old petrol car is kind of a gamble. Will it work? Is the clutch okay? The gearbox, the exhaust system? Do I need to replace the timing belt? Used electric cars are different. No, you do not need to buy a new battery. And you don't need to worry about clutch, gearbox, exhaust, timing belt, oil changes, because there aren't any. So used electric cars are actually much more reliable than used petrol cars. And people hasn't quite got that yet.
And another issue or challenge people are thinking about when they're considering buying a new EV or a used one, is of course some concern about where to charge the EVs, depending on where you live, for example, or will it, can I go for a longer trip? Can I have a car for both, the daily use and longer trips? So what's your advice there?
Yeah, I mean, in my book, I concentrate a lot on these questions that people have. And my best advice is to make sure you can charge your car at home at night. and make sure you have enough range for your daily, everyday drives. Because then you don't really have to worry about charging infrastructure and stuff, except for long drives and if something extraordinary happens. If you can charge your electric car at home and you have enough charge for your daily drive, then it's a whole new experience to just sit in your car and drive away and never have to worry about going to a petrol station or filling up your car.
Yeah. And another worry people are thinking about perhaps when they're considering buying an EV is, of course, as you mentioned a little bit, battery degradation. A worry that the battery won't last so long, that the warranty might go out, and so on. So, what would you think? What do you think people should think about there in terms of battery life, and should they worry about battery degradation?
You don't need to worry, but you have to be aware of that. In my book, I go through why do batteries degrade, how much they degrade, and what you can do about it, and how you should select your electric car. Because for modern electric cars, the batteries last the car's whole life. You don't need to replace them or something. That actually they last longer than the car, because when the car is scrapped and the batteries are reused for stationary use, like home batteries for solar power and stuff. But the batteries do degrade slightly during the years you have the car. So the range degrades too. You get shorter range. A company made Geotab examined 6,300 electric cars and concluded that the batteries degrade about 2.3% every year. So that means that after 5 years, your batteries have degraded around 10%. So your range has also shrunk with 10%. A car that could drive 300 kilometers on one charge manages only 270 kilometers after 5 years. And there are some methods you can use to minimize this degradation, like not charge your batteries to 100% every day. Charge it to 80-90% during weekdays and get a full 100% charge only when you really need it. For example, before a long journey or something. So I go through in the book how and why batteries degrade and what you can do about it.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, to conclude there, I think people shouldn't worry, but there are a number of ways that you. I mean, that goes for all lithium ion batteries. So I think you've written about that on Tesla Club Sweden several times, like staying around 20 to 80% in that kind of span is the best for the battery health. So yeah, something to think about for people with the smartphones as well. Don't have them charging perhaps all night.
Yeah, I mean, smartphones, they are made to degrade quickly. They charge 100% every day, and they want you to buy a new smartphone in 3 years.
Yeah, obviously, yeah. And another question people might be thinking about when they're considering buying an EV is, of course, if you live in a colder climate, like here in Sweden. We have quite heavy winters, a lot of snow and a lot of cold, sometimes 20 degrees Celsius or below even. Not so often, not so long, but still we have it. And 10 below is, in an average day in winter is just normal in Sweden. So yeah, what can you think about there in terms of increasing your range, and should you worry or if you have an EV?
Yeah, I mean, in cold weather, all cars range shrink. Even petrol cars, they use more fuel in winter days, so they have shorter range, and electric cars too. So my advice for electric car owners is to plug in your cars during the winter. Well, actually, always, but especially during the winter, you should connect your electric car to a charger as soon as you park anywhere, so that you can preheat the car before departure. Because the car is heated with electricity, so instead of using your batteries to heat up the car, you can use the charging the electric car charger to heat up the car. Every time you heat up the car, you use about the same amount of electricity as 10 kilometers of range. So if you run a lot of short errands during one day and you let the car cool down and freeze between each of those drives, it will quickly add up to reduce the range. But if you preheat your car with electricity from the charger and you have one long drive, you will barely notice any range degradation.
Yeah. And something I just realized that you could mention is that one advantage we both have Tesla, so obviously we like Tesla, but the biggest advantage I think right now for Tesla is if you're considering buying a Tesla, for example, or so, is the access to the charging network. Because still, if you live in Europe, there's still, it's not that easy to find a charging slot. You can find them, absolutely, but the problem is that when you arrive, there is not that many. So there might be a situation where you come to your charging station, then it's only 1 or 2 slots to use. But if you have a Tesla, you basically have 6 to 8 or 12 or even more. And in my experience, it's never a problem. I've had a problem once, actually, when I went to Norway, and there was a queue to wait for the cars, but it worked out quite well. But that's the only time I've had any issue at all, or waiting time. So that's something for people to consider, that check out the charging infrastructure in your area or where you travel. If you look into that, my advice is to do that in advance. It's no problem, but that's one difference I think we should mention when it comes to Tesla.
The charging network itself is really not a problem anymore. Not even for other electric cars. We have Ionity and other networks now. The biggest problem is paying for it, especially abroad. And as you mentioned, a lot of chargers has just one charger per site. But I try to keep my book generic. It's about all electric cars. And really, there are so many different electric cars now. City cars and cars usable for long travels, so that you should go out and compare electric cars and decide which one is most suitable for you.
Yeah. I think we covered some of the really key aspects, and we're going to continue to talk about EVs soon. But I would like to end by suggesting people in here in Sweden, because it's in Swedish, Skaffa Elbil, or owning an EV. It's really good start for people who want to look into, it's kind of a guide, I would say. And they're also, if you're more like me, are interested into technical stuffs. It's all everything about, how an electric motor and electric motor works and so on. So there's a lot of things to learn from this book. I really
everything you need to know about electric cars, but we're too afraid to ask. And it is available in any online bookshop. Just Google book Skaffa Elbil, because if you Google Skaffa Elbil, you get lots of articles. But if you Google book Skaffa Elbil, then you will find where to buy it.
Or you can check the links I will provide in the comment
Even
section
better.
Or in the info section. Yes, no worries, I'll fix that. Okay, thank you so much, Tibor. It was really interesting to hear your thoughts and guidance in this very important topic, hot topic, I would say. And I encourage people to stick around, because in the next episode, we'll look into Tesla's Gigafactory being built here outside Berlin in Europe. And that's something exciting, I think, for the whole EV industry, because it's affecting a lot of things. And we'll come back to that. So stay tuned. stay ahead of the curve, and stay electric. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Tell us what you think in the comment section below. And if you like the content and you want to support the show, we really appreciate a thumbs up. And consider subscribing. And stick around for the next 2 episodes when me and Tibor Blomhäll will be back on the show to talk about Tesla's Gigafactory in Berlin and the future of Tesla. As always, stay ahead of the curve and stay electric.